When tech turns ugly, bloated tools, broken, or just plain soulless, it's a sign. Time to build something better, sharper, more human. How can we make sense of the mess software has become, particularly at work, and what it takes to build better from here? Today's guest is Benjamin Garvey, a technologist with an eye for systems, people, and the patterns they create. He's the co-founder and CTO of Common Paper, building tools that make the messy world of legal agreements feel seamless and elegant. From Adobe to Betterment to the Philly Data Visualization Meetup, Ben's career shows us that when technology is both thoughtful and well-made, we can turn complex info into purposeful insights. I cannot wait for this conversation, but first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast where we untangle the way technology impacts our everyday lives and shapes our world pragmatically and without the jargon. Whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence and ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I'm here with my guest, like Ben, to help make sense of what's going on so you can design your human experience into the future. My name is Lindsay Tabas, the Lady Engineer. I am a pragmatic futurist and human first technologist and the founder of LearnProductMarketFit.com, the hub for simplified guidance on the toughest non-coding skills needed to bring technology products to market. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's make sense of building better systems from the broken ones. Ben, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
Awesome. Awesome. So our first segment on this episode of Make Sense with Ben Garvey, co-founder and CTO of Common Paper, is Never Have I Ever. In this amuse-bouche, I'm going to call out past internet habits, and I want you, Ben, to tell me if you have or have not done that. And if there's a funny story behind it, like, do tell, okay? You've got your beverage?
Yeah, I have. I'm drinking the Wegmans Black Cherry Vanilla Seltzer, just like the top tier seltzer in my book.
Great. Great. Awesome. So since no seltzer brands are sponsoring this episode, I will not go any further into other brands that you like, but my personal curiosity is piqued. So, never have I ever downloaded like 12 viruses just to get one mislabeled music track on Napster.
It's been a long time since I used Napster. I'm going to say that I don't. I don't think I ever got a virus. I have used Napster. That I can drink to that one, but I don't think I ever got any viruses.
No viruses? You're a lucky one.
I can't say I didn't download the wrongly labeled song though. Like they would come in, they would just be mixed up artists and 12 different versions of the same song labeled differently.
Wasn't there a version of like a Rickroll, but on Napster? Rickroll was like when you
Yeah,
would.
I remember it was like every single parody song was by Weird Al Yankovic, no matter who made it. They just
Okay.
put that name because they didn't know who it was, but just every parody song. Or like the parody artists themselves would make it Weird Al, so people would just download them.
Okay. It was a way to get more views, more downloads.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you ever, never have I ever gotten in trouble for using Napster or any other file sharing?
Yeah, so this is definitely the part that's aging me a little bit because I definitely didn't get in trouble from like my parents because I'm fully in college by the time Napster comes out. I still remember when my friend Steve he emailed me like a zip file that had Winamp in it and like two Nirvana songs, and I almost like couldn't believe how small the files were because like previously before that for MP3s we had all WAV files for stuff, and they're very tiny. But no, never got in trouble for downloading. Never got in trouble from the school for downloading music. It was still pretty wide and open back then. But we were getting them mostly from FTP files at first, and then we moved when Napster came around.
I had a summer research grant at Texas A&M, and I never had anything at University of Virginia about Napster. And within the first couple of days, I got an email from their IT systems telling me to stop. I got my hand slapped. All right, next one. Never have I ever had an aim away message that was like a cryptic breakup lyric and hoped they, whoever it was, would see it.
No, but I probably did that more of like early blogging where I would have like a sign off message or something like that. That was like a cryptic. So not on AIM, but definitely on like blogging type stuff.
Okay, so you've kind of you've left the cryptic messages online hoping someone would see
Let's
it.
see.
All right, never have I ever bragged about being a mayor on Foursquare.
Oh, that I for sure did. I was like desperately trying to be the mayor of the Philadelphia airport when I was traveling a ton. Like you need like serious, travel schedules to do that, but I did have like 120 check-ins at one point when it was still being used. But definitely like the local pizza place, coffee shop, trying to beat out that person that you didn't even know, but they were there, the week before you. But yeah, that was great.
So I was,
Original Foursquare was so much fun too, and then they this whole thing where they changed the app. They like Foursquare became something else, and Foursquare, the old Foursquare, became a different app, and nobody went and downloaded that other app.
yeah, Foursquare, just like some other apps like Clubhouse and others, like had its like peak in the technology community and then kind of went to the wayside. And Facebook,
Sometimes they have that resurgence though, like my son's, he's 15, and he and all of his friends play Pokemon. Like they're out there playing, like it's 2016. They're out there playing. But
yeah, I feel like that thought has crossed my mind because I was never a Pokemon Go person, but I remember thinking recently, wow, people still play that.
do people still do Facebook check-ins?
I don't know. I'm not like on Facebook
Yeah, I,
anymore. We had this conversation on an earlier episode this season with Eliza Erickson about Facebook and how I wish I could get the chronological timeline back because there was a time in the 2008 to maybe 2010, 11 range where there was an end. Like you could say, oh, I've seen all my friends' updates. I'm all caught up. I'll
yeah.
go.
What would you want to get in the end if you got all the way to the end? It's like you get a call from Mark Zuckerberg telling you did a good job or something.
No, I just would like to actually be involved in my friends' lives, right? And instead I go on Facebook or Instagram. I'm being offered so much content that, the social piece has been lost and it's just media.
Yeah, I can remember that in the Twitter era too, where you would just have no new content.
Mhm.
You'd be at the end and you'd be like, oh, I guess I should follow more people or people who are chattier and see what they're up to. But that just doesn't happen anymore. I don't think that happens on any platform anymore. You will just get way more ads, but you'll see something.
Right. All right. Never have I ever missed Dig, but pretended Reddit was just as good.
Yeah, I really love Dig. Dig was great. I really liked it.
What was so great about Dig?
Well, I think the site that was a precursor to Dig was Slashdot, which was a big not news nerd site for you know open source and technology and things like that. But Slashdot was limited because it only had like 10 posts a day. So if you were checking the stuff, you would get to the end, right? All the time. You would get to the end every day. And then you would go and read the comments, and the comments were like, there would be one funny one, and the rest would be terrible, or just like the most recycled, memes of the day. But then Dig came out and it was like unlimited content. So it was like just it would be new stuff every time. It was sort of customized. I think it was customized to like what you were into. I actually don't remember that, or if it was just like one page of stuff. But it was always just like it just seemed like the great stuff was at the top of the list, and there was just like an unlimited amount of great content there. And they had sort of taken all the stuff that Slashdot had sort of invented, but put it to like the last step, which was just allowing users to submit the stories.
Did Slashdot invent the upvote, downvote as a way to surface the community favorites?
So yeah, this is the definitely in the commenting and like the moderation and the karma thing. That was all Slashdot built all that first, and then it's like I said, but Slashdot had only like 5 editors, and they would submit all the stories. Like they would go through everything. I think you could submit stuff to Slashdot, and then they would choose to which ones got on the front page, and then Dig just sort of got rid of that sort of editor level
Right.
moderation, and then just did let the users do it all.
Yeah, Dig came right as like Web 2.0 was,
Uh-huh.
the saying coming out the door and user generated content became a thing. And
Yeah, I was when you said that, I was like, it kind of just had this like whoosh moment back for like what Web 2.0 was, and I was trying to remember what it meant, and really that was what it was like, the read write web, like the idea that you weren't just reading stuff in the web, you were actually like contributing to it and user interactions. We still didn't have social media yet, but that was fun.
yeah, we were transitioning from the editorialized way of consumption, which is the traditional way, like going to the New York Times and seeing what the editors want you to know,
Uh-huh.
to what the community wants you to know and the people.
And which one was better?
That could be a whole podcast.
I mean, this is now I know way too much about what people I know think. Like even our local school board election in the town I live in, like people were talking in the subreddit about the town, about Facebook posts. And the people are like, oh, this person who's running for a town commissioner liked a post by this anti, gay rights group 3 years ago. Like that's the level of like, of reach that we have to like find out what people think about and what they're doing. It's like, it's kind of crazy.
Okay, so here's a spontaneous one. Never have I ever gone back in my Twitter timeline to clean it up.
Oh, I definitely have not. I think there's a lot of people who like to delete their tweets. Like a lot of my friends of mine, I've gone and deleted like their whole feed. And I'm just like, every time I go back, I just like, oh, these tweets are great. I'm never deleting these. Although I'm pretty cautious. Like I always think about like if I'm going to delete something, I would probably delete it that like rethink it and delete it that day. If it's been there for a year, I doubt I would go back.
Yeah. My aspiration is that if I was ever called out on something from a long time ago,
Yeah.
one, I would stand confidently in who I am now and reiterate that people are allowed to change,
Huh? Yeah.
right? And be like, that it was a different time, We're talking about what it was a different time 20 years ago, whatever it is that anyone would catch me on. So that brings us to the end of Never Have I Ever. Before we continue, just a quick break. If you're a software developer or technologist who's been thinking about building your own product, but you want to avoid the costly mistakes or you want to avoid getting lost in endless coding without clear direction, I know what that's like. Let me tell you about something I created just for you. It's called Blueprint to Build and it's on learnproductmarketfit.com. Unlike most startup advice, which let's be real, is not written for engineers, this is a practical step-by-step system to help you go from an idea to a product that people actually want. So if you're struggling to understand your audience, decide on which features truly matter, or pitch your vision clearly, Blueprint to Build breaks it down with guides, templates, and tools designed for engineers by an engineer. You already know how to write code. This will help you learn how to execute like a product strategist so you stay relevant, valuable, and in control of your future. You can check it out at learnproductmarketfit.com. No fluff, just frameworks that actually work. So back to the episode. Going into our second segment of Make Sense with Ben Garvey, co-founder and CTO of Common Paper, deep dive. So in this segment, we get into the details about a specific innovation or technology issue and its implications for us in the tech world and for everyday people. So I'm going to cue this up. Software as a service, otherwise known as SaaS, began as a easier, faster way to solve problems that big, clunky corporate enterprise software just couldn't handle. So for over a decade, but actually a lot longer, because I was reading an article that said, hey, SaaS been around for 25 years, companies moved from software that was on premise on their servers to these web-based SaaS tools, helped along by a flood of easily accessible venture capital funding. And now that the money has dried up, what's the future of the software we use at work? Ben, can you walk us through how we got from what used to be called on-prem clunky enterprise software to the SaaS world we live in now? And what benefits did we gain from that move?
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. I think there's a couple other things I would throw in there too, where in addition to we have this like obviously pervasive software platform called the World Wide Web that like as soon as we built it, people started building software for it. And the first ones for like e-commerce solutions, blogging software, and then like there were tons of SaaS apps that sort of came out after Salesforce in around 2000. But you mentioned the low interest rates funded all the companies. The and that was even before we were at zero interest rates. It was still pretty low through most of the 2000s as we recovered from 2008 financial crisis. There's another big thing in there though that I think that people don't really appreciate, which is the wide array of open source and free software that was available. And so all this software that was written prior to the SaaS boom was like released under a license called the GPL, which is a very restrictive license that doesn't let you make changes to it without also releasing the source code. And there's a big loophole, usually called the SaaS loophole, that allows companies to run it as a service and not have to distribute the source code. So we have sort of the web comes out, we have low interest rates to fuel investment in companies, but we also have this SaaS loophole that allows these companies to like drastically reduce their development costs by deploying free software.
I want to explain GPL really quickly. So, general public license, it's a type of open source software license. It lets SaaS tools build on top of the open source code. So, they're taking advantage of functionality created by a wide developer community. But since the software runs on the SaaS company's own servers and not on the corporate client's machines, the SaaS company does not have to share the new layers that they added to the open source code. So that's the loophole. It becomes a business because they're in the cloud. And if it had to be on prem, they'd have to give up their quote unquote trade secrets.
Yeah, it's even to the point where this is fair. I don't know, but like definitely some people thought it was not fair. So they created a new license called the HEPL, which is basically the same as the new public license, but this company, so if you're using it to release the source code, even if you run it as a service.
This is quite reminiscent of a book I read called What the Dormouse Said, How the 60s Counterculture Influenced the Personal Computing Industry. Kind of talks about the end of the 60s, early 70s. And, a bunch of guys are building open source software, imagining a better future from some garage in Palo Alto. And then like Bill Gates walks in and is like, I'm going to build a business with all of this software that you guys have already built. It feels like that fight has been happening for decades.
Yeah, for sure. And then, it's sort of the part that sort of enters the SaaS era is when Firefox is released, which sort of starts to take over from Internet Explorer. In 2002, it seemed like Microsoft had won that whole browser battle, and then they totally lost it again. Then Chrome comes out, and there's a lot more competition, but that was a whole different era there too. The other one I was going to say between the journey to SaaS from old enterprise software, like I used a bunch of ERP, which is enterprise resource planning software. We didn't have SaaS. We were like a manufacturing company, but we had people in the remote in the field, but we hacked all the features we need out of the software using Excel. Like we would write queries in Excel that would hit our database directly. We would get all the data we needed, and then we would sort of build mini apps inside Excel and trade those files around as part of our business process until we said, okay, we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to build our own, scripts that will sort of run these things themselves. We're sort of automating that, and then it even translated to me sort of starting to build like a mini business intelligence software that we had inside the company that let us go from, instead of running reports every week, we could run them every hour and build this manufacturing observability platform, which was for me at the time so much more fun than all the other work I was doing. And that sort of moved me into, I was like, okay, who's doing this kind of work? And I found RJ Metrics, which was a local, analytics company in Philadelphia that was years ahead of where I was. And they basically just bugged them until they gave me a job and worked there and that's been the focus of my career. I still work with people from that company
That's
today,
awesome.
Common Paper.
So companies that we all work at, think Fortune 1000 and smaller too, have acquired a bunch of SaaS platforms to work around their clunky enterprise software. What benefits did we gain over the past 10 to 15 years from going towards SaaS?
Yeah, this is a good question because if we answer these questions, I think we can sort of then piece together where the future is going to go based on a couple of things. But I think the main benefit you would get from all this is that you can be located in many different locations and not have to swap files around. You get sort of this collaboration effect, right? That is like kind of baked in by default in SaaS that has never worked correctly in local file sharing, and that especially back, it was just a mess. So you don't have to worry about version control of the files. You don't have to worry about, you're sort of not even really working with too many files at all, except in cases where you're creating outputs and inputs. But the application state is like your state of record for how that's working. So we get a lot there. You get a lot of best in practice. So, and a lot of freedom to like move around. So if I spent, $50,000 on a piece of ERP software and it turned out to be junk, I'm kind of stuck with it for the next 5-10 years. Whereas SaaS, there's a lot of competition and ways you can switch around and move to a new one that's doing a better job. And I think we sort of see that in most of our jobs. We're like every 2 years, like, oh, we're switching to Workday, we're switching to JustWorks, we're switching to Jira, we're switching to Trello, we're switching to all the, and we're constantly turning these over to use the best in class. And so I think the corporate America has benefited greatly from, and the people who work there, like tons from the innovation in SaaS that has been out there. So.
So, distributed people being able to work together from distributed locations, collaboration
And like,
tools.
and those distributed locations are not just like, well, I'm in California and I'm in New York. It's like I'm at home or at the office or I'm in, even if you're co-located, you still have access to the same tools, whether you're at your desk versus like someone else's desk too.
Right. And the ability to collaborate. So, for instance, when I started my career as a UX designer, I would have to send a file that said version one with my initials and forward it to someone else. And if they made edits, they would have to update it to version two and put their initials, right? And so now with cloud based software, we don't have to have that same version control where the files get super messy. Continuous updates, so right, you don't have to wait until you pay for an upgrade to version 7 of whatever ERP your the cloud-based platforms are
Yeah, it used to be really expensive, and you had to hire consultants to help you install it. And in the SaaS era, for the most part, they're also obviously consultants, but for the most part, you just get the updates as part of normally subscribing to the software, which is great. I remember the first time working at a SaaS company in 2013, I remember asking Chris Merrick, who was my boss at the time, it was like, "Oh, do we just like deploy like every week or every couple of weeks?" And he's like, "Nope, every day. Every time you're done with the thing, we." And so I would deploy myself like 10 times in a day, and that was like pretty normal. And at that time, we had 20 engineers, and
Mhm.
we were all doing that every day. And so it's just a normal way that software would get delivered.
Yeah. So SaaS started as a smarter, more agile alternative, but somewhere along the way, it also became the bloated system it was trying to fix. So where do you think things went wrong?
Well, I don't know if things like went wrong. They just sort of moved to what the market is demanding, and sometimes like we haven't sort of sorted out exactly what the market wants, or we have big players in the market that are able to leverage their size to sort of be terrible for longer than they should because of like just their inertia of the markets. You know, not to knock Salesforce, it is a amazing success story of
Please
the company.
not Salesforce.
It's like, but it's the original SaaS, and it's like at this point it's like whatever you want it to be. It's like whatever you want a thing to be, like it will do that for you with enough effort and help. And so what happens is if you've set it up properly, it can be great. And if you have not set up properly, then the people who work at that company for the rest of the time they work there, they're almost stuck with this bloated mess that of dependencies and conflicting data and unused fields and things that people know they're supposed to ignore or don't fill out properly. And I think there's just like this endless amount of cleanup and maintenance work that you have to do. So we built tools that deliver software efficiently, that allows for continuous updates to come through, but there's still this work that has to be done to like, you know, take the needs of the business and translate that into software. That's still really hard to do in 2025. It's so if you're if your business doesn't like align with what the software wants to do by default, you go into this customization world. Unless you're very good and dedicated at and smart at doing it, it makes it pretty tricky to keep going with that.
Right. I will admit the one thing about the analogy or metaphor, I'm not sure which the right term is because I'm an engineer, but that corporations are people, that people are unique snowflakes and subjective. So if you build a SaaS platform that works for this person, like the likeliness that it will work for 10 other people is fairly low unless you do the needs analysis work to understand the commonalities across the business and add the flexibility options that they need for where they vary. So that's really how any system becomes bloated and with too many features is because that work is not done correctly. And I guess that's what has kept me employed for 20 years. Let's go back to that zero interest rate policy, where so there was so much VC money that sustained SaaS that didn't necessarily have sustainable business models. So have you seen it all like now that the money isn't there, like SaaS platforms dropping out and clients not having the tools maybe they came to rely on?
Well, I think there. I mean, you could say that there was too much money in the market. I think there are. lots of niche players that sort of disappeared or dried up, and we could probably name examples of those. But there are also like really big success stories. Like Atlassian has acquired a suite of products that are widely used by many companies. Slack is part of Salesforce, but like they're just sort of like the default communication tool around. There's lots of like really great companies got built that do make money, that weren't like weren't overfunded or weren't just built entirely on ZERP. It was just a lot of money that was able to go into those companies, and they weren't all SaaS companies that were getting that ZERP money. I think the SaaS was actually worked out better than sort of like the cemetery of social media networks and things that just never caught on the network effects. If you were providing value to business, usually you were paying for it and you were able to make some money doing it that way, or you got picked up and acquired somewhere along the way. So I think B2B was actually pretty good on the SaaS, because it wasn't like really a hot market when the social media companies were huge. But I think B2B was like a little bit more grounded in reality.
On the investor side of things, I know over the past few years, even a startup that has 1 million users but hasn't yet monetized successfully, investors don't want to take that risk. You should have a business model from the very beginning. So with Common Paper, you have a lens into how your clients are viewing their technology stack. What are their challenges? Like, where are we going next with SaaS?
Yeah, I think the most obvious answer to this is that everyone's talking about is AI and how it affects how software gets built, how software gets used, what customers expect from all different areas. And I think if we think about the previous SaaS boom was I think web, GPL loophole plus zero interest rate phenomenon happening. I think like today it really is around it's another loophole, which is like this AI loophole, right? Foundational models were trained on everything on the internet, right? And so is that a copyright violation or not? I don't know, but I think like we we have to pretend like, at least it is from a founder standpoint, from a software engineer standpoint, the world is clearly moving in this direction where these tools are going to be part of our everyday development and experience. That for now we have to assume that that's going to be the case. I don't know if it's going to be the case because the New York Times has a lawsuit with OpenAI right now, just saying that like they violated fair use on the training of the New York Times data, and part of it is you can get a whole New York Times article out of ChatGPT if you ask it for a certain date and things. It'll spit it out to you, and I think that seems like a pretty much a slam dunk about what of a copyright violation. The rest of it though, is it because there's room there for like if it transforms the content. But really when you look at it, if it has a commercial value, it seems and it's competing with what news organizations and content organizations, and if it's competing with what they do, it seems like it's almost impossible that you could argue that it's not for, it doesn't have a commercial value in
Hmm.
training that data. So we'll see what happens, because it could come out where overnight GPT-4 is like unusable and they have to retrain on new data. But I think until we find out, so that's like one thing that's powering this loophole, that's powering the whole new era of it. We see lots of customers using AI tools in their contracts, doing stuff to write contracts, read contracts, all that stuff. And so we've built features around that too, and we have new features coming out very soon that will do a lot more of this. It's easy to compare AI. I think it's good to compare AI and the sort of crypto boom. But the crypto boom is clearly had its moment where people still are making lots of money on crypto, but it has really failed on delivering the promise of like usability and like features that people use on a daily basis, other than a value store that is digital and you know not found in the ground somewhere. And I think AI has already proven in lots of cases that it does valuable work for people, certainly for writing software. I mean, most engineers I know use Cursor or other tools to generate code. And I think for me personally, I think it probably makes me at least like twice as fast than I was before, which was really great because I don't get stuck on things. But in the SaaS part of things, where right now we're sort of lots of companies are adding AI features into where you're chatting with support bots and things like that, or using it to generate text or other things. But I really think like the one example I like to think of a lot is like the way I think it's going to go is things like you would chat with right now, if you chat with like most support bots and say like, oh, how do I add a user to my account? It will say, oh, you go to the settings page and you go to the users tab and you click add a user and you fill out the information and it will invite this person to your thing. But wouldn't it be great if you just asked the chat bot, like, how do I add a user in my account? And it said like, oh, who do you want to add? And you just told them you want to add it and it added it for you. Like that's the way that software will all be used in the future. And we're software like that already works like that now, but everything will work like that in a year or two.
We're not quite there yet. Just in using MailChimp, which has been around for a long time, was acquired by Intuit. It's a pretty sturdy platform. They have their AI chatbot, but they're doing a beta of a new forms builder. And the AI chatbot is not trained on the beta form builder. So it's giving
Even
me
even OpenAI itself, like when you like we they have a assistance API. They have a couple different APIs. If you ask it stuff like, "Oh, how do I do this?" It's bad at telling you how to use its own product, which is hilarious. But I think that's like because we are in such the early era of this is like the classic example of like Kodak invented the digital camera. Like they invented the thing that eventually killed them off.
Mhm.
And my worry and a lot of other founders worry right now is that like that even though we know this is here and this is like hugely important, can we move fast enough to like build the things that will that'll make the software better for people before some other new competitor comes along.
Well, what I will say to call back to what we were saying about needs analysis and really understanding the business processes and business capabilities that you're empowering and making possible, that's always going to be the differentiator because anyone can build some AI powered something or other. But if it doesn't match the way your humans, your customers want to approach the problem, then they're not going to use it. Right. So that's how you can definitely stay ahead of the curve. And I love saying that because you focus on the customer, you'll always stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, this is just a tiny little pitch, but it's kind of like why we started this company, Common Paper, because yeah, you can use AI to write a contract for you, but we are what we would call standards based. We have standard contracts that are written by lawyers, written by humans, and because in a lot of ways, contracts are kind of like code. They're
Mhm.
like code that is written gets executed, but it gets executed like you can generate code with ChatGPT or Cursor, and maybe you can read it, and as an expert coder, you can tell what it's going to do, but you can always just run it and see if it does the thing that you want it to do. You can't really do that with a contract because it runs on what I say is like the slowest computer in the world, which is the American legal system, where you have to put it in front of a judge and they have to interpret it. And then that's sort of the precedent of what's going to happen. So if you start from a standard and then modify it from there, add clauses to it, you're probably in a better place than you would be if you started just from a blank sheet of paper and asking a whole uh, contract to get generated from thin air.
So I have one last question about SaaS. I was doing my homework ahead of this session, and SaaS made it almost too easy for business units to acquire it. And now large corporations, IT leaders have lost visibility into their tech stack. Some of the apps they're paying for are underutilized or not used at all. Are you hearing about those challenges from your customers or from just your peers? What strategies are you, besides AI, betting on next?
Yeah. So if you're just talking about sort of app fatigue, where we have 12 different things to log into, and some are using single sign-on and some aren't, and you're trying to figure out like, so the number one thing is using a good tool to manage your expenses. Like we use Ramp. It's fantastic. Like we sort of issue a virtual card for every single expense we have, and then it's very easy to track what's being spent on what. If we turned off a card, we are 100% sure what's going to happen. It's not like there's going to be three things we forgot about and then we'll disappear. So like, I think the financial tools have made this problem like much, much easier. Brex has like a similar type thing for startups, so we can sort of manage cards that way. So I actually think this is less of a problem, at least on like the keeping track of it. Spending the money is still a lot because there's just so many tools out there, and there's always something that you're trying to use that will give you an edge on a particular task. And then people also just have their own particular preferences about what they want to use. People on my team really love to use Zapier. They really love to use Trello. I'm a huge. I like run my whole. There's a new Trello version coming out next week, and if it's bad, it will like ruin my life.
I will
People,
hope that won't happen.
people, people don't like to change things, but they don't like their software to change, but they will change to another piece of software like very quickly. We've had people that are really into Notion, people with all these tools, and I think there is that like proliferation of it. And there's a Conrad Parker from Rippling. I think I got his name right. It might be reversed. He talked about this idea that there's a this the issue of like role based access controls for companies is becoming very very important, where they have to make sure not so much that they're not spending too much or that they are keeping track of the apps, but like who has access to do what in an app, right? Because there are certain things where a rogue employee could expose company information. They could, delete sensitive information. They could share it, and they want to make sure that that stuff is not just the compliance part of it is done well, but also just that they can prove that it was done well, and they have an audit trail for all that stuff that when changes were made. And it's in the SOC 2 era, which is we're all kind of in now, that SaaS apps have to be compliant with that. We have to keep track of like the process for all that. And so his big thing is if you bundle like these things together and just build it on a foundation of access control, that you can actually steal business away from other apps, because we're sort of getting past the era where everything was new. Everything's kind of, there are lots of key pieces of the app stack that are well decided and well formed. And so if you bundle it all together with the access based role-based access control, then you'll be able to win business that way. And I think Rippling seems to be doing really well with that, which is like different than the era that I started in SaaS, where everything was getting nicheified, where you would build a big app and then you'd have three competitors, each breaking off like one piece of the stack there.
Got it. Are you seeing any? You mentioned Atlassian and Salesforce doing a lot of acquisitions amongst the SaaS environment. Are companies asking for more vertical integration or consolidation? If you're talking to a developer who's thinking about starting a new SaaS company, what principles from the past should they throw away, and what should they be thinking about going forward?
Yeah, definitely integrations and APIs are almost table stakes now. So if we have a REST API, which means you can send contracts or read data from contracts with a curl request. Curl is a software that you can use to fetch data over the web, HTTP. But in addition to that, people want integrations with the popular CRM tools. Like if you have a Common Paper account, you can connect to your HubSpot account, to your Salesforce account. We can push notifications to Slack. We can create a Stripe subscription from a contract, and you can configure it to send automatically or have it send invoices periodically, and configure the fees in different ways. And like I think people just expect all this stuff works together. Gone are the days where you can sort of build something cool and have it live in isolation, and people will come to you and make it work. I think they expect your information, your tool to work with other pieces of the stack automatically, even if it's not tightly integrated, just to make sure that data can show up there.
All right, so everyone hears that integrations and APIs are table stakes. You need those just to be
Right.
viable in the market.
Yep. That's
All
for
right.
sure. And the AI stuff is all the new craziness happening.
So finally, in this last segment of Make Sense with Ben Garvey, co-founder and CTO of Common Paper, from keyboard to Visionboard, the developer's journey to being a founder. Ben, moving from writing code to leading a product or company requires some mindset shifts. So how did you navigate that when you founded Common Paper?
That This is a good question, because I don't think it necessarily like my mind like that has shifted at all. Like I think like my mindset is probably the same as it always was. I've always like either leading a team versus an individual contributor. I always like really had to understand what the business did and what things were important for our customers. And that sounds like cliche, boring platitudes, but I don't want to accidentally work on something that's like really bad. Like there are companies, and I won't name them, but you can Google them and find them. But like in Philadelphia, that like people who worked there like didn't actually know they were like spamming people or like swapping out ads on old ladies' toolbars and stuff like that for like to just spam ads and replace ads, things like that kind of stuff. And I think I need to know what I'm building, so like I don't accidentally build something that like I think is harmful for the world, right? And I think that's important to me. So even when I even think about this when I'm hiring engineers, I'm hiring people that are going to write the code. I want them to be able to understand it, and not because I need them to be future founders or anything like that. I just need them to understand that like there's 100 micro decisions they're going to make every day that they're not going to consult me on. They're not going to consult the product manager even, or the designer, or even whoever's in the company. But I want and they're going to make a correct decision sometimes and an incorrect decision other times. But if I hire people who understand the product and understand the users, they will at least make a better decision on those 100 micro decisions more often than they won't. And that's huge. That compounds over time, right? And
Mm.
so that fits back into your original question is like, what's the mindset? Like, there are people I know that are like very, very good software engineers that just only care about the technology. And that's great. And those people are great for solving difficult problems and coming up with novel solutions. They're just, especially for like an early engineering team, they're not the people you want, because if you hire someone who's an expert in, say, technology X, and then you decide to pivot to something else and use something else, they're just not going to be happy with that. So they're better off at later stage companies where they can delve into their specialization. The other thing is, I think too, is for personally, if you work at different companies, if you're someone that works really hard, eventually you come to the conclusion like, I should work for myself instead of work for someone. It's something you can't really turn off.
Hmm.
Like, I will work my ass off for a public company, Fortune 500 company, do really well, but I can also do that for myself. And eventually, as you get to a certain age, and you're like, okay, that's probably the better payoff.
Yeah. Well, I think developers have such power in their hands to create things and create things quickly. And there's always that impulse to create based on our, solving one of our own problems and then dreaming that this becomes a business. And we tend to skip some steps. And in the journey from going, this is a solution for me, to this is a solution for a lot of other people, we kind of lost in the code if we don't have an anchor with who the customer is, who the people are, what the use cases are, so that we can focus our work in a direction that will make what we're making commercial. Like, we can actually market it and sell it. So you're not getting lost in just building something for yourself and wondering why no one else wants it.
Yeah, I think that part of it, but it's okay to build stuff for yourself. And I think that curiosity is what carries a lot of people through, because eventually you will come up with something that does resonate with other people. And I would recommend anyone who's even a glimpse of thinking that they would want to maybe do a startup at some point, build a product first and see if you can make $1, make $10, make $1,000 off the product. And it doesn't, you could be it. You could close it up after that, give it away for free after that. But there's something a little bit magical about the first time someone pays you $10 for something that you just created on your laptop, that just feels like the world changes a little bit, that you sort of have twisted, like diverted your destiny a little bit. That if 100 terrible things happened to you in a row and you had no job and nothing, then at least you could probably do that again, and probably do that at like 10x or 100x what you did. And that it really gives you a little bit of confidence that you wouldn't have had before. I did it a couple times before I got into the SaaS. It's some of that work I was doing led me into like working in the SaaS world, and I've really enjoyed it ever since. But I know I could go back to the scrounging a new product and getting it out there.
Yeah, I think one statement that was given to me by a career coach in 2012, 2013 was, if you're really an entrepreneur, you will create multiple businesses in your lifetime, and don't put so much pressure on the first one. And so I like what you said in there about just build something and see if you can sell it for $10.
Yeah.
That will give you, the empowering feeling to keep going from
Let's
there.
be clear. I'm not looking at starting any more businesses. This is my last one. This one I'm hoping that we all retire from, because it's doing really well. And I think it fits like a really big need that people have, which is creating contracts for stuff that like shouldn't require, a lot of expense and time to make.
Yeah. So let's end with one other question is, are there any like practices or books that you'd recommend developers embrace to make that transition from, writing code to leading?
The There's this one really great one, and it's like maybe the most boring book. If you looked at it, you'd be like, "Why would anyone read this book?" Because it doesn't even seem like a book. It's just like it's like a listicle of a book. I think it's a pretty short book, but there's like maybe like, I don't know, 300 chapters in it, because some of the chapters are like half the page. But it's called The Principles of Product Development Flow. And until I read it, I was just frustrated with the process of building custom software. And it really sort of digs down to like why it's a frustrating process. It really helped me figure out why building software didn't feel like building, like I wanted to build it like an assembly line, like a Henry Ford factory, and it just doesn't. but sometimes it kind of feels like it is. And when it's doing well, it does. And when sometimes then other changes will happen and it doesn't anymore. And this is the book that really helped me figure out why that's the case. So that's one of them. The other thing is, it's not a book, but just advice, is that if you're moving into like where you're an individual contributor and you're moving into managing people, and this is true for founders, true for managers, it's especially true for managing people of a small team who you're intimately working with every day. It's just that everyone's different. And that sounds like everyone knows that. No, nobody actually knows it until you have to like be responsible for someone's livelihood and what their hopes and dreams and goals are. And when I was 27 and started managing people for the first time, I was shocked by how I thought everyone thought the same way I did at some level, and it was not true at all. And there's no real shortcut for figuring out who they are other than talking to them, asking them questions, knowing who they are, knowing what's important to them, knowing what motivates them, knowing where they are on their motivational journey, because some people are very ready to go early in their career and not as much later, and some people are the other opposite. Some people are like hanging out in their 20s and then they get serious by the time they turn 30 or 40, and just knowing where they are, knowing what they want. And it's people really appreciate it when you're able to deliver the things to them that they've worked for, and that their expectations are set properly. And that only comes from just digging in there and getting to know who they are.
I love that. Coach the person first, then the skills.
Even as a manager, I always try to say, like, I'm managing for the person like 70% of the time and the company 30% of the time, and the company benefits from it. Because you don't want someone who is just there and just kind of not really, at their full potential. Because if you can even get someone anywhere close to their full potential, it's like you have two people in that spot or three people in that spot.
Hmm. I think it's great for you to recognize and point out the subjectivity and variability of humans. And it's totally normal for engineers and computer scientists. I even had to face it. Like, why can't everything be black, white? Why can't it be ones and zeros? Why is language so confusing? And when we have to code it in the back end, we have to, overcome the differences between address line one and just address one. There's a lot of confusions back there. And I like that you pointed that out, because uh, we need that to not just understand our coworkers and lead teams, but also to understand our customers and our partnerships and the people that we serve.
Yeah, that's totally true.
All right, so let's make it make sense. We moved fast and built a lot, but now it's time to clean up, refocus, make software work for people. The developers who step up as systems thinkers committed to their user base will always lead the way. Always. So thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay Tabas, and guest Ben Garvey. As a reminder, if you're a developer with big ideas but want a smarter way to build, check out the tools library at learnproductmarketfit.com. It's full of practical guides I made for engineers to turn ideas into products that people actually want. You've got the code. This will give you the clarity. So we hope you enjoyed our take on building better systems from broken ones. Ben, where can people find you online? Do you want people to find you online?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm at bengarvey.com. I'm posting there mostly now when I do. Instagram, Benjamin Garvey. There. And then go to commonpaper.com. I'll be there for life, hopefully.
I hope so too. I love that aspiration.
I've already been working on it for 4 years, so it's been a fun ride.
I'm gonna support that vision, that this is the one that you retire with. So as always, you can check out all the links and resources in the show notes. And final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits on YouTube. Hit that subscribe for next week's episode, and for audio only, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Ben, for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay.